Shibani, let's begin with you. Co-creating Dabba Cartel. Now, I am a little wired and I must be forgiven because I've binge watched it last night. I loved it. And I have to say, because a lot of people are watching it right now, and I think those who've seen it or are watching it will agree. It's just how it cuts through with its simple middle-class attitude, bringing women together in solidarity, just pure empathy, unfiltered empathy for each other, bringing each other up as you go along, and so subtly at that. That's what I loved most about the show. But co-creating the show, Shibani, and putting together this stunning star cast, how did you manage to do that? Where did the idea germinate from? How did it go?
Well, I knew I wanted to create a story that was female-led, and I knew I wanted the genre of crime drama. And if you look at the idea of Dabba Cartel, we have so many cartel stories from around the world, but I think what made this one so unique was the backdrop of Thane. I think the quintessential Dabba that is associated with Mumbai and Thane was another quirk that was really interesting. And when you take women from this middle-class society who aren't a part of the crime world, and then you take them on this journey that they now have to navigate as they enter this new world of crime, it's a really interesting situation to place them in, because you are looking at them in their regular home lives. You're looking at them navigate this space when they're together, trying to figure out how they're going to combat these, mafia guys, or the ones that kind of put them in a position where they're placed in a certain threat. And I think oscillating from one to the other was a really interesting way of presenting a cartel. I don't think it's something that we've seen before. So I found the backdrop of India actually really quite interesting, and Thane specifically. As far as the women are concerned, it gave us the opportunity to really layer these characters. You've got women from different age groups, from different classes, who really work together to overcome this situation that they're in. And I think that was a really interesting addition to the story, and I also think it was really interesting and exciting for us as creators to be able to do that.
But also to get women like these on stage all together, Jyotika, superstar in the South, Shabana Azmi, I understand, she's home somewhere, but to get her to be the fulcrum of the show, how do you manage to get all of them together?
I think I had a choice. She's my daughter-in-law. She pulled me by the ear.
Really?
And of course, आओ करो. I had to do it. सास हूँ ना, क्या कर सकती हूँ?
Yeah, she didn't really have a choice. I always knew that I wanted her to be a part of the show. And I remember telling Farhan that Shabana has to do this show. And he said, call her and just tell her she has to do it. So I think she was the easiest cast member to get on board for obvious reasons.
Was the part written for you?
It was written for her. The two things that I had on my whiteboard when I first thought of this idea was Shabana Azmi, drug cartel. And so I always knew I wanted to work with her. So she was on board before the idea was even developed, because that was really important for me. As far as the other cast members are concerned, full credit goes to the actors that we have on board, because there is this excitement and understanding of being part of an ensemble cast, understanding that you are sharing space with people that are an integral part of the story. And I think when you allow for that to happen, the story becomes more and more beautiful. As storytellers, we're allowed to say a lot more, because nobody's thinking of it from just their perspective and from their character's perspective. They're thinking about it as a whole. And when you're that invested and excited in a story, as creators, it's the best position that you could possibly be in. And so full credit goes to each and every cast member who said yes to the project and looked at the story and said, we are excited to be a part of this.
Jyotika, what drew you to the series? Because that one line, for those of you who watched it or want to watch it, I would think Narcos, Thane is what you said, that was your line. That's Ozark right. Is also what comes to mind. So if you've seen Ozark, imagine an all-woman cast holding it together in Ozark. But Narcos, Thane, what drew you to Narcos, Thane, aka Dabba Cartel?
I'm sorry, it's just, I'm not able to get the question.
What drew you to do this?
I think
What made you
everything-
pick it? Because,
I think everything about Dabba Cartel, the ensemble cast of such extraordinary women being together, especially sharing screen space with Shabana Azmi ma'am, I think that was something that drew me to the script first. The character of Varuna, I personally also resonated with it. I thought a lot of me was in her too, because I'm a working woman who got married, who left work for a while and then got back to it. So I resonated with it. I saw a lot of women in her as a character, and I thought the toughest characters to play are the ones which are the real life ones, which women resonate with, and I thought Varuna was one of them.
well, I'm sure Surya is a much better husband.
No, it's also inspired from a lot of real life stories. I have friends who are in Varuna's shoes, so I really was very happy to play this.
Was she as strict as, to work with? You didn't have many scenes with each other, but was she as strict as she is in the film? Because like I said, the silence, that glare spoke so much.
She is extremely an absolute opposite person of what she comes across. I think she broke ice on set. She was the most friendly and most appreciative, and I think it's just standing next to her is very empowering. And we just feel her it's not about her acting career alone. It's the woman she is, and that comes across when you work with her. So I think she broke ice. She was like a friend to all of us. And we were all age groups of women, and I think we just blended in together. And Shabana ma'am is just like a friend now.
Actually, I'm an angel, but you can't see my wings. So I have all these friends who will say those things for
But
me.
Shabana ji, what you say, you didn't have a choice, and I would think to pick this role. But if I hark back my memory, that possibly something which you've helmed like this before, illegal would be Mandi, where you were the madam of the brothel. And now you have something similar, very different. This is a narcotic-driven plot. That was different. What made you pick this? Because I'll tell you why. Because you've had very recently a similar line plot which had Dimple Kapadia and Saas, Bahu and Flamingos. Was that somewhere down the line a parallel that ran in your head and said, maybe I shouldn't?
No, not at all. In fact, more closer than Mandi was a film called Godmother that I
yes.
had done and had also won the national award for it. But I thought the role of Ba allowed me to play her completely differently. And I think in the course of doing the part, I realized that, power can be quiet. Power doesn't need to be shouted from the rooftops. That a certain assertiveness comes by just simply speaking your lines and not adding anything to it. So in order to play a part that appears to be almost simple at one level, you have to do a lot of homework and a lot of riyaz to make it appear effortless.
So how did it go? So what, Shibani, you called her and you say you have to do this? Or did you know that they're going to call me and I'll have to say yes?
No, I had no idea at all.
You had no idea.
But the thing is that, Shibani and we've spent a lot of time together. We've talked about content. And I know for a fact that we are on the same page as far as content. So when she told me about the part, not for a minute did I doubt that it would be a run-of-the-mill thing. And was immediately curious about it. And then when it came together, I was really glad I did it.
Shibani, to get Shabana ji, to get Jyotika, Nimisha, Shalini, it was a perfect cast that way. Also in terms of the plot, a crime thriller is very rarely associated with an all-woman ensemble cast. Was it on purpose or it just came together?
No, it was on purpose. It was, we see so many crime shows that have...
Did it begin, let me put it this way, did it begin with I want to do a crime thriller and it's going to be on these lines, or did it begin with I want an all-women cast to helm something which hasn't quite happened before?
I think it was the female-led that was a little ahead of the crime drama, but the genre wasn't far behind. So I knew it had to be a combination of those two things. As far as getting the cast together, it was a collective decision, I think. Excel, Netflix, our incredible director, Hitesh Bhatia, who knew exactly what he wanted. And I think the reach was pan-India. We wanted a cast that had never been seen together before. We wanted it to be an exciting combination of actors, actors who are very well known for doing good work, you know, and we knew that when we presented the role to these specific actors, they weren't just going to say yes based on the story idea. They would want to know more about the character, where the character is going. There would be a deep dive into the show itself. And I think that's, as creators, that's really what excites us when you have somebody that's so interested and invested in the project and wants to know as much as possible. So as I said, yes, Shabana said yes in 5 minutes, but we had spent so much time together. And we have discussed art and film and content thoroughly. And you can't ask someone like Shabana Azmi to play a character that has no depth and that doesn't have any substance. So she would have known, even though she said she said yes very quickly. The others...
Was Jyotika difficult?
No, she wasn't, but she did ask all of the right questions. She really wanted to know a lot. She was excited from the beginning, so it was pretty much a yes from the beginning, but there was so much curiosity. And I think that fascinates me when someone wants to know so much about their character. It was never but what do the others do and what do I do? It was like, tell me more about her. Tell me more about her relationship with her husband. Tell me more about the part that she plays.
But you know what was palpable, Jyotika, is what Shibani is saying, the psychological depth and the layering in characters. I think that really came out. And the subtlety of all of it. You're a superstar in your own right. And you are. And you're coming, you've done OTT before, but it's new for you. So what were your questions, what you wanted in place before you picked this project? What won it for you?
So yes, it is my first web series. But as far as Varuna was concerned, we have layers, we have women from different stratas, and she was the only one who belonged to the higher strata. Yeah. And I think I didn't want her problems to feel secondary, because we usually feel that the problems of the lower strata, I don't know how you should redefine that word and use, but the lower strata are the ones which are the real problems. I know it's a very common issue. Varuna was playing a corner of every woman, so I just wanted her problem to resonate. And those are the questions I think I raised, that let her problems not be small because she belongs to an upper strata. Because at the end of the day, she's a woman, and all women battle the same issues within themselves. So those were the little minor queries we had about characters, but otherwise, I just loved the layering in her. And as I said,
in every character, I think that's what most of us who watched it love it so much, because every character was so distinctive, and you fell in love with some part of that character. And that's why, because there is a class barrier with Varuna and the rest of the class. Right. And possibly that's why you're given the Narcos Thane line, which skims off the surface of the others because they quite have not heard it, but it hits home with everyone who's watching, watching you say it. But we talk about OTT, Shabana ji. You've been through the whole. You've actually been somebody who got great roles even then, author-backed, meteor roles. But OTT has changed the game. And streaming has changed the game. Rarely can you find bad acting right now. It's who's better, because you're looking at each one of you and each one of your different scenes, and you're saying, damn, this Nimisha is really good. Jyotika, Shabana ji, that, just that glance, all of that. So has it opened a different world, Shabana ji, now for actors?
Yes, certainly. And not only for actors, because actors are getting a lot of more choicey roles than they had earlier. But I think what has happened is that the OTT has finally defined that content is king. See, the OTT is not ruled by the economics of the first weekend, which normally within the mainstream cinema you see, "Arey, opening nahi lagi, तो फिर सत्यानाश हो गया. यहाँ opening की ज़रूरत ही नहीं है.
But you're number
Because
one
it
in
has
India
a
on
shelf.
Netflix.
Yeah, it's number one on Netflix. I'm not complaining about that. But the thing is that it has such a long shelf life that it can go on forever and ever. And that's why I think that writers and producers are having the courage to make different content. When it comes to women, I mean, it was really not thinkable, even 20 years ago, that a woman of the age that I am would play the lead, would play the central figure. You know, that is all opening up. And I think what is happening is that it's no longer driven by age. It's characterization. And when you can get involved in characterization, then you're elongating your career. But the best fallout of this is that content is king, and which is the way it should be.
But you know, as a fallout of that, it's opened way many doors. You talk about ageism and age, but also gender. Who would have thought? You know, who would have thought that a series like this would come in 3 or 4 years ago, or would be as avidly watched and celebrated? It would be difficult to think.
You know, I think it's really part of the women's movement that has been filtering down and entering every reign and every sphere of what women are doing. And I think that comes interestingly because finally you're happy to own that men and women are different. Not better, not worse, but different. And that difference needs to be celebrated. And I think it's also a result of that. Maybe not directly, but yes, certainly.
You know, I'll take off from there. And Shibani, I want to bring you in. Was there an attempt, because it was so subtle and it was so huge, for me it was a delight to watch how, you know, the rawness and the unbreakable bond that your characters had with each other, where without, importantly to say, judgment, without question. You know, because there's a line where the maid and, you know, the woman of the household, the maid has a video, of course it's a sex video, which somebody has. The woman of the household, Shalini here, what I loved was, doesn't ask kyun hua, kyun kiya. She doesn't ask. She says, कि कोई drugs बेचता है क्योंकि video delete कराने के लिए. मतलब कर लिया was fine. There was no judgment, no question. And that was so beautiful to watch. You know, the all-out woman, the powerful messaging of woman-to-woman solidarity, which is so rare. Was it an attempt to deliver that, or it just happened subliminally?
No, we worked really hard. The writers, Vishnu Menon, Bhavna Kher, and our director, Hitesh Bhatia, Abbas Khan, the creative producer, we worked really hard on making sure that the layers of these characters, of these women, of their relationships came through without any kind of judgment, with this raw understanding of what a relationship is like. And it was really important to not kind of have things on the nose. You need to say things sometimes without saying things. You know, in that moment, Raji stands up for Mala as her friend. There is no judgment. So, and it's even in the male and female relationships, when Varuna has a fight with Shankar, there's some raw, brutal honesty in that fight from both ends. It's not about gender in that moment. It is about a relationship. And what we wanted to do was not hammer on the head this thing of gender, of having to say something, of having to deliver a message. Sometimes the most important things come from just watching and learning, I feel, without having to really say it. You have to leave something for the audience to just understand. And I love that you have pointed out this one very special moment where Raji, played by Shalini, doesn't judge Mala for the video.
No, I love it because she doesn't ask. You know,
Yes.
she doesn't ask कि क्यों किया ये video, but she just says कि कोई drugs बेचने लग जाता है अगर video delete नहीं किया. तो it was beautiful, I thought.
Yeah, and even in the scene when, spoilers for people that haven't seen the show, but when Mala asks Varuna, why are you doing this? You know, she doesn't ask her as soon as Varuna enters the cartel. She asks her later in a moment of extreme vulnerability.
Right.
She asks Varuna, why do you need to do this? And so in order for these relationships to develop in the most raw, authentic way, we held back a lot. And I think in that holding back, you see a lot more.
And that also happened with Jyotika in that one particular scene because, I don't think it was judgment, but there was a class barrier between you and the housekeeper. And then suddenly that breaks when you've been administered some drugs. And speak about that. How did that?
So that's what, we're all women inside at the end of the day. It was not about your strata, or it's not about who has more money. It was more about what you are from within. And that depth and emotion is what I saw in every woman and every man.
Did it flow into the set?
Oh, yes. You mean
The camaraderie that all of you had behind the scene?
Of course it did.
Did you know you were doing something
See,
which will have this kind of impact?
There are two things I realized. One is that women are out there just waiting to uplift each other. Dabba Cartel was quite an example of it. And this only happens when, even though there is a Shabana Azmi and actors of Gajraj Rao sir, it only happens when you have all an equal space on the set. We were all treated equally, and that drove a confidence in all of us, different ages, that we are equal and we all have well-written characters and we were all secure in our places, and that brought us all together. We didn't question about each other's role. We didn't have any debate. We enjoyed our work because we were
it
secure.
translated on
One
screen.
second. It also busts the myth that women are women's worst enemies.
Exactly.
That to me is the most important thing. क्योंकि constantly यही myth जो है चला आता है और उसको break करना बहुत ज़रूरी था, and that's where I think Dabba Cartel success is the most.
Shabana ji, I want to ask you, we are reaching the end, and I want to ask you just two questions. Because most women also love status quo, the way things are going, chalta rehna chahiye. But popular culture, cinema, and be it streaming or on the silver screen, sometimes plants that seed. Where we are talking about the cause of women, how big will Dabba Cartel, maybe of course not carry it on, but make that possible small impact?
It depends on whether it's made interestingly or not. Just the lofty idea in itself never works because it's an art form. Okay, so finally it has to stand the test of the medium. After all, not here standing and sloganeering. So we must never forget that when we want to say something, it has to be truthful to the medium that it is. And as long as it is interestingly told, as is the feedback we are getting in our first season, I hope there'll be many more.
So because cinema, popular culture is a part of that bigger cycle where women emancipation, feminism, or whatever you might call it, is concerned. Do you think that cycle has begun now?
Yes, most certainly. And it has also begun within the mainstream. That to me is the most important thing, because otherwise you're preaching to the already converted.
True.
So unless it comes within the mainstream, it's not going to be as effective. And this is a small step towards that. And I'm sure that there will be many such opportunities.
And I really hope so, because the theme of our conclave is the age of acceleration, and I think women have waited far too long for their time in the sun. It's time to accelerate that. And Shibani, thank you, for co-creating something which actually, puts the spotlight on women, and so subtly, where it's so acceptable to most men and most women. And when you accept, then hopefully you'll embrace in times to come. So thank you, the three of you. I'm going to ask you one quick question. Many would say we've been speaking about feminism, but what's wrong in that? If you had to prepare a dabba, because it's Dabba Cartel, Shabana ji, let's say for your husband, what would be in that dabba?
Shami kebab and aloo gosht.
Shami kebab and aloo gosht. If he had to put one for you, prepare one for you, what will be in it?
First tier samosa, second tier samosa, third tier samosa.
We've got to give Shabana ji some samosa in the backstage. Jyotika.
I think I'll have...
Or Surya. Surya. What would be your dabba for Surya?
I think it will be the staple South Indian breakfast, which we both love. And I think sharing the dabba would be very important.
The same thing for you then. So
Yes.
they'll pack the same thing for
Yeah,
you.
the dosa, sambar, chutney, vada, pongal, everything.
Shibani, you've thought over what would it be for Farhan?
I have. Farhan is very easy that way. One layer would be paya, second layer would be mutton biryani, and the third would be vanilla ice cream.
And if he has to prepare a dabba for you?
One layer would be chocolate chip cookies, the second layer would be donuts, the third layer would be French fries.
All right, we're going to quickly break for some samosas now, but once again, you know, the subtlety with the way you've all done it. Thank you for doing it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
and
you
I think
so
we
much
all
for having
appreciate
us.
it. Ladies and gentlemen, do watch Dabba Cartel, already #1 on Netflix. Raise a warm applause. Shabana Azmi, Jyotika, Shibani Akhtar.
Thank you.